We've been conditioned to believe that it's about doing, and we're exhausted on this treadmill of doing, and we wear it as a badge of honour. What we have to realise in life is we don't get what we want, and if we do, it's fleeting. We get who we are and who we choose to become.
Now, we live and operate in a society that seems to be held together by lies. We're all lying to each other about targets, what we did, the hours we worked, that we love what we do, that we're really here to serve, that everything is fine. It's like there's so many lies.
When we can come back to our most authentic, true self, how it creates a life, a work and life that's not only fulfilling but truly impactful. And the whole point is you don't have to sacrifice the material things for it. That's a false paradigm that we've been taught. But what happens is how you create becomes more joyful, becomes more expansive, it becomes more aligned, where you feel like you're really expressing your authenticity into the world.
Welcome to another episode of Humankinder. Over the last 200 years, our society has evolved from industrialization into this modern capitalist way of being. And as we look at developing countries and nations as they strive to aspire to this capitalist ideal, and it becomes something that is really important globally for people to achieve, we have to ask ourselves the question, here in the West where it originated, how well is it really working? And we're waking up to two sides of the coin. It has no doubt incredible progress, incredible innovation, incredible growth for our people. And yet the flip side, something is not working. The destruction of our planet, the decline in our mental health, in the vibrancy of people everywhere that we meet, and this slow deterioration of meaning from our lives. And if we are truly on the midst of a global awakening, then our organizations are one of those critical frontiers. And my guest today is working at that frontier. She's here to ask, do we need to burn this whole thing down? Or if our organizations are going to evolve alongside our consciousness, what actually needs to happen? And so, Mirjana Boznovska, welcome to the show.
Welcome. Thank you for having me. I'm really delighted to be here.
Yeah, it's beautiful to have you, and thank you for inviting me into your home. Really to discuss the work that's very close to your heart. And I'd love to hear from you as you look out amongst this landscape, the organizational landscape, the societal landscape. What is it that you're seeing?
I really love the segue that you've used to bridge this gap of where we are. In my 35 plus years of experience and also my own journey, what I've witnessed is the same reoccurring theme, that what we're doing is not working. It's reaching a critical point, and we know it's not working because the statistics have never been higher. We talk about disengagement, we talk about burnout in the workplace, and we've almost become immune to these statistics. But what we don't recognise is the human stories behind that. The stories of unfulfilled potential, of people feeling, this huge disconnection in the workplace, and more importantly, organisations are at the forefront of change and doing it differently. So that's what's really exciting. How can we make a sustainable change?
Yeah, thank you for that frame. And I personally have experienced this. I have worked with people in these organizations. I have many friends. I know so many people. And it has become just so normal to say, I really don't like what I do.
Yeah.
If I'm really honest with myself, I don't want to show up to work tomorrow. And there seems to be two pathways. I just knuckle down, I accept it, and I attempt to just do it for long enough so I can pay my mortgage and get out.
Yeah.
Or I just completely disengage, disconnect, and just go somewhere else and drop out completely. And I sacrifice all of the perks as well. And so I'm curious, as you look into this dynamic of evolving organizations, how can we start to change our organizations when we live in such a world where it demands so much money from us, it demands so much from a mortgage perspective, from a lifestyle perspective, and life is so expensive. How do you help people to wake up in a society that seems to be designed to keep us trapped just doing the way that we are doing?
Well, I mean, it's such an important question because typically, we've been conditioned to believe that it's about doing, and we're exhausted on this treadmill of doing, and we wear it as a badge of honour. Our to-do list is this long, and it's short-lived, and it's the tick box approach, and it doesn't work. It's fleeting, and our organisations are forever trying to keep the momentum of their team motivation because it's usually an outside-in approach. So what we're saying is you don't have to sacrifice anything in essence, but what we're turning the landscape inward. So how can we develop a greater sense of being, which when we do that, it automatically drives what you do effortlessly. So you're not having to have this struggle and striving and following a plan because that's the external plan, but that doesn't align with who you are and what your value system is. So it's an inward shift, and the momentum is sustainable. So there's 4 defining principles that we talk about the future of work. And the first one is about sustainable leadership. So typically, organisations focus on developing their leaders, and that's definitely a great place to start. But it doesn't end there because each person has their own paradigm and inner landscape of how they perceive themselves, their colleagues, their peers, their leaders even. So it doesn't work when we just stop at the leader. We have to have a way where each person can develop within their own sense of self. The second one is intergenerational well-being at every level of the organisation. What do we need to do to ensure that that takes place? And the third one is how to increase connection in an increasingly AI-driven world. Because whilst we're connected, we're actually more disconnected. And so what are the parameters to develop that? And the fourth one of the future of work is about business as a force for good. So business that not only, is profitable, but profitable impact. So it focuses on people, profitable impact and sustainable impact. So they're the 4 defining principles that we need to look at. And that doesn't start or stop with just developing a leader. So we need to have an inside-out organisational approach where each person is evolving and developing with their own inner sense of being. And so in that, what we need to do is develop the greatest practices of self-awareness, self-responsibility and self-leadership.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. So if I summarise those 4 pillars, you shared there's intergenerational development of self, no matter where you're at.
Yes.
Sustainable leadership, really investing in that. Also, business as a force for good, which I want to get into as well. And then your 4th one, Connection
in an increasingly AI-driven world. And, these are the 4 parameters that essentially shift the experience at work. So in terms of your question and frame in the beginning on, people wake up and they don't want to go to work and they see it as a tick box because it's very compliance driven. HR comes from a compliance driven perspective. If we do all these things, we've ticked the boxes, but it doesn't meet each individual where they're at on their journey. And so this is the huge paradigm shift that we're seeing in workplaces, innovative workplaces, and driving the future of work.
Yeah, I love it. It really resonates with me. I've actually personally worked in this space for the last 10 years, and I've gone everywhere from total cynicism and honestly like a lack of hope that we can ever shift to being reborn to optimism about it and then back again. And it just seems like such a tricky problem to solve. And yet you point out in your work really beautifully that we don't have to make radical shifts on the systems and think about how do we force all these systems into alignment. We must first just start with aligning inside ourselves. And you outline this shift that I'd love you to speak on, which is the shift from having being primary. And then because I need to have these things, I therefore need to do certain actions. And then as a result of me doing all those actions, as an afterthought, there is my state of being.
Yes.
And so you propose flipping that around. I'd love to hear you speak into what that shift would look like.
Well, that's essentially a huge paradigm shift because, again, we've been conditioned to think that that's how we get what we want in our life. But the shift is, who am I? Because what we have to realise in life is we don't get what we want. And if we do, it's fleeting. We get who we are and who we choose to become. So if we, for example, want to have a job promotion, and I think, well, if I have this job promotion, I'll be happier, then I'll work, so I'll do better at my work, and then I will be, happier, etc. But the flip is be that person. So be the inspired person, be the collaborator, be the person who takes ownership of their work. And through that, you will enjoy all these things. So it's the state of who you are which attracts those sort of things to you because you then already are experiencing it. And we've heard this in different ways about manifestation, but it's actually a very grounded and practical approach. If I choose to be in that energy space of what it is I want, suddenly you're realizing you already have what you're looking for. And, my question is, imagine if in workplaces, each person showed up from that perspective of being what it is that they want to achieve. It very quickly shifts the, workplace dynamic, the collaboration, the innovation, but more importantly, and this is where I get really excited, the ripple effect of that, which goes outward to families, to communities, and, we have to be the change. We've heard this saying, but we have to be the change we want to experience in our workplace. And so that's the important, bringing it back to the important point, why it just doesn't stop with the leader, because you can have a very inspiring leader, but if that particular person's lens of how they perceive their environment, their work, their peers is very fear-based, it's in survival mode, it's projection, blame. Well, whatever the leader says or does, it's always going to be perceived through that lens. So it's not enough to just develop our leaders. And this is something that I get really excited about because there's so many leadership programs and we focus on our top key people in the workplace, but this is an organisational inside-out approach. So you're elevating the whole organisation, and that's what makes it sustainable. And that's where you get the sustainable impact that drives the momentum.
I love this. And it is radical because, old paradigm is that I need to go and have certain outcomes in order to be happy.
Yes.
Or in order to be successful.
Yeah.
Or
in order to do my job well, I need to have these outcomes.
And then so in order to get these outcomes, I just do whatever is necessary, right? I do whatever is necessary. And then as a result, I am that person And then there's a fleeting sense of okayness once I hit the target, and then it dissipates, and then on to the next thing. And so what you're suggesting is just get radically focused on your state of being, regardless of outcomes, regardless of objectives. So if you want to feel peace, if you want to feel happiness, know that you can consciously choose, if you earn it, the ability to be in that state. And that your inner state is not dependent on the external world.
Absolutely.
Is that correct? And so the liberation in this is phenomenal. But also the challenge in this is phenomenal, because what you're suggesting to people is you are 100% responsible for your inner state, for your state of being. And so how do you broach this with people and teach them and show them that the old idea of external events causing your inner state and other people causing your inner state is an illusion, and actually your inner state is your own sovereignty?
Absolutely. And that's something that nobody can take away from you. Nobody can take away your own lived experiences, which this is really powerful. And it's really powerful for workplaces because it shifts the responsibility from the employee thinking, what can my boss, what can my company, what can my peer do for me? It shifts it to how can I be? Who can I be to show up for myself? Because it really is about you showing up for yourself when you come from that state of being empowered, letting go of belief systems that don't serve you. Because essentially when you think of it, below the surface, we all have all these built up past experiences that shape our lens of how we view ourselves, our environment. So when you can take radical responsibility for what that might look like, it's a game shifter, because now you know that you actually have always been the captain of your own life. Yes, you can take information in, but you will always process it through the filter of your own inner state of being. And, is that aligned with myself, my values, my goals, and the person that I want to be? And that's a really important thing, particularly this time of year, with the new year and goal setting, New Year's resolution. A lot of people focus on goals and what it is that they want to achieve, but they don't look at who do I need to become to achieve that goal. And that's why goals aren't sustainable. That's why New Year's resolutions by week 2 and 3 have usually dropped off, because people are trying to jump to the goal without recognizing the inner landscape and what needs to change within themselves to move towards the goal whereby it becomes sustainable. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. And so if I'm now listening to this and I'm thinking, wow, I have been setting goals for years and those goals have never really delivered, or I've struggled, and I notice myself going up and down depending on who I meet and where I am and all these external conditions, how do I actually start to look inwards and start to take the wheel of my own life practically?
So a huge aspect is self-awareness, and honesty really starts with honesty to yourself. And it doesn't have to be discussions with any people, but most people feel really uncomfortable about being honest with themselves about their true state of being. And this is not a judgment or criticism. It doesn't have to come from self-criticism. It actually comes from a place of compassion, because we're more likely to implement change and make it sustainable when we come from that place of compassion for self and the choices we've made in the past, which may have not always served us, but it's got us to where we are now. And there should be some credit in that, right? So it starts from a place of honest assessment of where I'm at. An audit, an inner audit of self. And what has worked in the past, what hasn't, where, I want to achieve this goal, but why haven't I achieved it? I want to go to the gym, X times a year, X times a week, but it drops off. Why? Because I feel uncomfortable about, going to the gym, or just really being honest with where you're at, your inner state of being. And then exercising compassion and kindness, and looking at, well, what is one small change that I can make towards this goal?
Yeah, I love this idea of inner goals, like almost like inner projects.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of outer projects, and we really do spend a lot of time chasing external. And yet we don't dedicate the same amount of time to inner projects. And so I would love to hear, when we look into that inner landscape and we try to bring compassion, what are the signs and signals? What should we be looking for when we think about what's not working? And then what should we be looking for in terms of what would be better?
I think the main thing is to focus on how you feel around certain things. So we all have a very strong inner guidance system. And when we learn to soften the outside noise, because the problem with goal setting, external goal setting, is a lot of people tend to follow what has worked for others, or, this seems to be the latest roadmap to achieve a certain body shape or career goal or relationship goal, etc. But what they don't take into account, that we all have our own lived experiences and upbringing that has shaped our perception around certain things. So the first thing is to sort of soften the outside noise so you can listen to your inner voice. And it starts with, well, how do I feel around certain things? How do I feel around certain people? How do I feel when I'm following this goal, but it doesn't really appear to be my goal? So it's listening to your inner guidance, and that usually shows up in our body language, in our state of being. Do you feel agitated? Do you feel a sense of freedom? Do you feel joy? Are you coming from a place of fear, or is it coming from a place of expansion? Because a lot of people, and this is just how we've been conditioned to behave, set goals around what they don't want as opposed to what they want to work towards. So this idea of fear-based, working, I don't want another relationship like this, so I'm not going to do this, rather than I want an expansive relationship. So what do I need to let go of within myself that's going to move me closer to that? Oh, well, I have a problem trusting people because of my past experiences, so maybe I need to work on trust. Or, so it's really doing an inner audit of what that looks like within yourself. And no guru can tell you that, because our, experiences are unique to us. So it's important to be discerning with information that you take from people. Absolutely be open to learning, but always filter it through, does this resonate with me? Does it resonate with my values, my lived experience? Because no one, whilst we all have very, similar experiences and can connect with the emotions of those experiences, no one has walked in your shoes, and your unique experience is unique to you. And so it's important to always take that in perspective when we're looking at goal setting and what's going to work for us.
Yeah, it's a very powerful message, because the underlying message I hear is fall in love with your own life, fall in love with your own destiny. And when you look inside, if you really get quiet and develop a skill of self-observation or self-awareness, where you just sit for a little while and just literally observe what is happening in your body sensations.
Yeah.
And what is happening, say, in your thoughts. If you just pick those two and notice what you're saying is notice anywhere where when you go into situations, there's a heaviness or a tightness in your body that you can say that's fear. Or there's a frustration, maybe you feel it in your chest. And get familiar with the inner characters in your inner landscape, your emotions, your sensations, your thoughts, and start to observe them. And once you do that, you'll start to get a little bit of a map, a little bit of a reading of how you are being in all situations. And without changing anything, that step in itself is so illuminating. And so this question then of what do I actually trust in there is a big one. Because if I go to work now and I'm being given all these orders of what I need to do, or if I'm in a relationship or in families, people are telling me I need to do these sorts of things, how do I actually know that the feeling inside myself is telling me to just change or move away from that person? Or if the feeling inside myself is saying, do you know, this would actually be good for you, but you're just a little bit afraid because maybe you're afraid of public speaking, or you've had a bad experience with someone in the past. And so how do we discern really when we should move away from something, or when we just need to work on letting go of something that's holding us in place?
That's a really important one. And it really is important because two things. Firstly, it can be fear masked as we can convince ourselves whatever we want to believe is true. And so then you look for evidence that supports what you've already convinced yourself of. That can be very dangerous because it obviously can limit your perspective, because you're constantly looking for information that validates what you want to believe. And if the belief is not a healthy belief, or it's a limiting belief or a past belief, obviously it keeps you small and it keeps you in that fear-based mindset. But how to distinguish the two is, firstly, it's all about slowing down the pace. Exactly what you said about becoming an observer of your thoughts. And what you do is you recognize that your thoughts are just thoughts. They're actually not always even real. It's just what it's come up with in the moment. You can choose to take that on board or not take it on board. What I mean there is if it's a fear-based thought and it's coming from past experiences, as time goes on, you start to recognize those patterns because you have a practice of being really honest with yourself. So when you ask yourself, the power of questions, bold questions, is actually a huge step forward in this scenario of working out, is it a fear or is it self-justification because I don't want to do something? Ask yourself the power of asking a bold question, and just honestly ask it very boldly with yourself. And you might not always get the answer there and then. Just ask it and walk away with your day-to-day, as opposed to sitting there and intensely trying to process that question. You'll find that the answer always comes through, because when you've come from that relaxed place, you will be able to tune into what those emotions really are. Are they coming from a place of self-protection, or are they coming from a place of, no, alignment, this doesn't really feel right for me? They're very two things. Alignment is something that you feel intensely in your body, because your body relaxes, you feel in flow, you feel joyful, you feel a sense of inner peace. I've had experiences where I've said in certain opportunities, I might have said yes to that particular collaboration, And it's been an instant reaction. Yes, it has felt deep within that this is the way to go, because it's felt really aligned with my values, my being, my vision for this year, which is about greater connection and connecting with people in an expansive way and really driving impact. That's my momentum for this year. And I know that feeling. So I might have said yes in the moment, and then there's been situations where it hasn't felt right. So the alignment isn't there, and I've said no. And then I've asked myself afterwards, did I say no because there was some fear around what that opportunity was, or did it genuinely not feel aligned? And very quickly I do find the answer. And surprisingly, I have had situations where sometimes there might be a little bit of fear showing up in that what's asked of me. And I just sit with that fear and I say, yeah, I understand that. I understand you might feel some fear in that moment, but I'm going to choose that outcome anyway. You'll be fine. So it's not about the absence of fear. It's recognizing that fear is present, because this, and you know, the unknown will often ask that of us. There will be some fear because we're stepping into an unknown. So it's recognizing that the fear exists, but choosing to take inspired action anyway. So that's the word, inspired action, as opposed to, oh, I should do this, or other people are telling me to do this, but I don't really want to do it. And your body cramps up and you feel uncomfortable. And, you know, so your inner guidance, how you feel, is never going to betray you, because that's who you are and that's your system.
Yeah, it's a theme of radical shifts today, because that for me is a huge one, to recognize that there is a knowing inside yourself that exists beyond the mind,
yeah,
and beyond our logic, that when you sit and be quiet and ask it, will actually guide you in the most aligned direction for your life. I think that is just huge, because when you're trying to work everything out with your mind, every decision has pros and cons. And you can argue for all the different pros and cons, and you can convince yourself, and it can all get very confusing and very difficult. And yet that mind is saying, I know the way, I know the best way. This is the way, we got it all planned out. We've got 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. You just stick in with this person and it's going to be fine. You stay at this job, then you get this promotion. And all the while, deep down, something inside you is screaming quietly, no. And, you know, this can seem like a very radical act to trust that voice, because what it feels like to me is that if I trust that voice, my life will fall apart. How will I pay the bills? How will I progress my career? How will anything happen if I am not controlling it all? And so how can we develop the faith to really listen to what our innermost being is trying to tell us and trust it?
It's an important question, because it's not about upheavaling your life and anything radical that's going to cause a huge upheaval. So the important thing is to recognize that we all have this human, timeless drive to experience the highest, best version of ourselves. It's something built innate within us all. The problem is, though, the challenge is that because of all, you know, the conditioning we've experienced in our life, this ball of light that we're born with, over time is just layers upon layers upon layers. So that dim that and keep us in the status quo, because that feels safe, and because of that we try to want to control everything around us. So to undo that is a slow process. It's not about doing anything radical and causing chaos, because that also is not sustainable. So it's about, it might be, and this will be different for everybody. This is why there's not a one size fits all. And anybody that tries to tell you there is, or there's a program, or achieve this in 7 days. You've really got to look at that with some discernment. Everybody's circumstance is unique and it will look very different for each person. But it's about what is one small change that I can make. Because trust happens over time. It doesn't happen in 7 days or in one instant decision where now you are letting go of everything totally and trusting yourself completely, because there's been years and years of programming that's happened. So we've got to slowly undo that. But it's about small changes. So it might be a simple thing like setting a healthy boundary. So it might be, usually when somebody asks you to do something and you don't want to do that, we say no, or usually we don't even say no. We give a false reason why we can't. We make up an excuse and we can't. But it's about, standing in that truth and not over justifying yourself. So it might be about what's a small boundary I can do? How can today I've always say yes, today I'm going to say no. So what are the small steps that I can take? And so trust happens over time. So this and I feel very disrespected in that environment. I'm going to set one boundary. Or I feel I'm not very kind to myself, so I'm going to start talking more positively to myself. So it's about small, consistent changes that build the momentum.
Yeah, I love that message. And just start where you do have very immediate acknowledgeable control. Like, let's say you're the person who's going to the gym. And you just, I actually don't like the gym. I don't want to go to the gym. And years punishing myself. Everyone goes to the gym. It's like, just stop going to the gym. Just be like, I'm going to find something else. What do I love? Maybe I love to dance.
I'll go for a walk today.
Literally.
And
it's
nature.
Like doing that a few times and then feeling the relief of that and the increasing presence and being compassionate enough and honest enough to yourself to do that. A few small wins like that you're suggesting.
Build the momentum. Yeah.
And so wrapped up in all of this is the whole topic of honesty, radical honesty.
Yeah.
Now, we live and operate in a society that seems to be held together by lies. And so we take an organizational context. Boards are lying to executive teams are lying to boards, executives are lying to each other, where, direct reports are lying to executives. We're all lying to each other about, targets, what we did, the hours we worked, that we love what we do, that we're really here to serve, that, everything is fine. It's like there's so many lies. And you only have to look inside yourself to notice. As we awaken a little bit more, we just realize how many lies we have been telling ourselves. We have been telling our partners, everyone around us, and how many lies have been told to us. And we know those lies are there, but we just never acknowledge it. And so you see a leader, for example, say one thing and do the exact opposite. And there seems to be no accountability or no way of broaching this topic without blowing the whole thing up. So how can we start to live more truthfully in a system that seems to be just so predicated on everyone just pretending that these lies are not happening?
That's such a big one. And you're right. First and foremost, it's the lies that we tell to ourselves. I mean, that is the essence of it. It's easier to project and blame someone else, and it's because of everything else going around me. And, accountability is a huge one. But essentially, authenticity is the big question here, because workplaces are typically not built around being your authentic self, being your true self, seen, heard and valued for who you are beyond just the role of what you do. I mean, that in itself is a huge shift that needs to take place, because on paper, we talk about, psychological safety, and we talk about, our values in this organisation are X, Y, Z, and they're usually values on a wall, but they're not embodied. So what is the shift that needs to happen where each person feels safe to be who they really are in the workplace and be recognised and rewarded for that? Because usually we say bring your true self, but we'll only reward you if you've achieved X, Y, Z, and it's contra. It doesn't actually work in that sense. So it's about leading by example, and it starts with radical responsibility to yourself and who you are. So again, really being in touch with all these things that we've spoken about before, starting with your own incessant chatter and becoming really aware of that. And what is that telling you on a daily basis? Because, the greatest false truth out there is that a lot of people think it's the war is between themselves and others. It's I'm competing between myself and you and you and you and you. But it's really us and ourselves. So how can we be kinder to ourselves? How can we really be honest with who we are? And, what is our foundation built on? Is it built on lies, or is it built on a stable foundation of values that are true to me, not ones I've inherited from my family and generations and society that tells me this is what a successful life should look like, but what it is that I want to achieve in my own life. And I'm not talking about just outcomes, but who do I want to be? How do I want to express myself? And that comes with authenticity of then being able to follow through in the workplace, in your personal life. And that's an embodiment. It's not a skill you learn. It's an embodiment. Who you are at work is the same person you are at home, is the same person you are in relationships, because you embody that state of being. And that's infectious. It's actually really infectious when have you ever walked in a room and something draws your attention to a particular person, and it's not always how they look or what they're wearing, but it's the energy of them knowing who they are and standing in that authenticity. And it's a quietness. It's not an overt confidence. It's a quiet confidence, because they are aligned with their true self of their values, what they're working towards, how they show up, the radical responsibility they take within themselves rather than projecting and it's everyone else. And so the way to shift that paradigm in the workplace is don't seek the change outside of you, make the change within. And through that, you model a way of being that inspires others, and suddenly everyone's lifting in the organisation.
Yeah, the authenticity, what you're saying is the authenticity is possible in the state of love. If love is present, if you are your own best friend, if you're kind, then you can actually speak truth. And what I'm hearing and what you're saying is that there's no point speaking everything that's on your mind and getting it all out if you haven't been able to be truly truthful with yourself and access that true love inside yourself. Because one scenario would be, I'm going to tell that person exactly what I think of them now. I'm going to tell them the truth.
Yes.
And what you will say to that person from that energy is not actually the truth.
No.
Because you might say to them, you are just a real prick, and you're really nasty and you're really this and you're really that. If you really look inside yourself, the truth might be, I'm working in an organization where I'm just not happy. I'm compromising so many places in my life that when I show up here and then I see you behaving from your own conditioning, it triggers me so much that I feel real anger and judgment towards you because ultimately I'm living a life out of alignment. And I have not yet found the way to access love inside myself. And so therefore I have to make you the bad guy and blame you for how I'm feeling inside. Now, if you were to speak that to someone, that truth illuminates and drops away so many of the illusions. And so when we talk about speaking truth or being authentic, you must know it in yourself first.
Oh, I love this. This is, it just really absolutely resonates because there's such a misconception around truth. You know, you get people, oh, I'm going to tell you my truth, exactly what you said. I'll speak my truth. But there could be two truths within a scenario because that's my experience, but somebody else has their own experience through their own lens. So truth is not aggressive. Truth is not demanding this is the way it's got to be. Truth meets you at the place where you've met yourself in that honest, authentic space of, oh, well, this person is really triggering me, not because they've actually done anything maybe that wrong, but because it's really hitting a wound in me that happened so many years ago when I had, this scenario happen and it made me feel not good enough. So when I see them behaving, it really shines a light on my worthiness. So truth is really coming to terms with other people. Really, they just, if you haven't worked on your own inner state of being and maybe some unhealed traumas and patterns, other people will just hit those little woundings, inner woundings, say, that is really an opportunity to look inside yourself and say, well, why is this really triggering me? Because at the end of the day, other people's behaviour shouldn't be triggering you. If you've worked through what those patterns are, it shouldn't be triggering you because it's really how they behave is a reflection of them. It's not really anything on you. So when you come from that place of love, self-love, self-compassion. And, there's a lot of stigma attached to when you talk about self-love. People can really misinterpret what that word means, but it's really about honesty with self and compassion for your own journey and your way of being in the past and what has served and what hasn't. And you come from the place of just acceptance, of forgiveness for things that have worked and not worked. And now I'm more informed to make better choices. So it's actually an empowering perspective. So when you talk about your own truth, you're recognizing and speak from that place of love and peace and kindness. You're not trying to change the other person, but you're recognizing that this scenario, this environment, that person doesn't actually feel aligned for me because it's not. It doesn't. My inner guidance, say, let's put it that way, is telling me it's not really the environment that's expansive, that's joyful for me, that's all these, positive, empowering states of being. It makes me feel like I need to shrink. It makes me feel limited, et cetera, et cetera. So it's an inside job. Yeah, it's always an inside job. And so I always look at scenarios that have happened in personal life or even in my workspace when things do trigger my inner system. The first thing I do is self-reflect rather than thinking, oh, that person was this or that situation was X. Always go inward. Why did that experience, what part of me did that shine a light on that I need to take a look at? Why did that experience bring up this emotion? What's in that emotion? Where does that emotion come from? Oh, okay. So back some years ago, this scenario happened. Maybe I need to do a little bit more work around that. So that behavior, I can recognize that that's not aligned with me, but it doesn't trigger me. Because a lot of the problem is not so much the emotion that happened in that experience, but then we keep retelling our story, that same story over and over and over, and replaying that. A week later, we're still talking about that incident that happened because clearly we haven't sat with the emotion or the experience of whatever that's bringing up for us.
Yeah, there can be a real addiction to those states of complaining, of being a victim. I feel that very much inside myself, the stickiness of those, and that the body even is addicted to that cortisol and that stress and the busyness. And it seems to me to come back to making this shift in your life from having and doing to being.
Yeah.
And my question is really, if we have spent our lives up to this point conditionally loving ourselves, which means imagining that a certain outcome that can happen today can change whether or not I'm worthy or not, or whether I'm okay. How can we flip that and learn to love ourselves beyond conditions?
Yeah, that's the really big question. And everything we've spoken about, all these small little changes that happen over time, it starts just building that foundation, strengthening, fortifying that foundation of inner being. The small changes in your boundaries, the small changes in self-love, the small changes of acknowledging fear, but then acting, taking inspired action. All of these fortify that inner foundation of self-love. So it doesn't happen overnight where you think, okay, I'm worthy. If you've spent a lifetime believing worthiness depends on external things happening, you can't just flip that switch overnight. It's not sustainable. But it's all of these practices that we've built about. How can I build greater self-awareness? When that person triggers me, how can I look inward rather than blaming that person and then replaying that same story for 3 weeks? What are the steps that I can take? So again, we talk about developing the practice of self-awareness, where it's a muscle, and the more you practice it, you strengthen it, and it becomes easier. And so then you become so self-aware that you're constantly being able to reframe on the go and not take things lightly, not take things to heart when things happen outside of you. It's a way of being. It becomes a way of being. How can I develop, take greater responsibility, self-responsibility? Well, you recognize that you are the cause and the solution of the matter. Life doesn't happen to you, it happens by you. And so that, again, is not something that you flip the switch. It happens in these incremental moments by practicing. Okay, now I'm more aware. Self-responsibility is, well, what do I now do with that information? Okay, so this person triggered my worthiness. I've taken a moment to look at where that stemmed from. Okay, what can I now do to work on and heal this within me? I can look at taking some bit more meditation, being more present with myself, spending some time in nature, maybe journaling and really expressing how I feel around that. If it warrants, having a conversation with the person from a place of love. So radical responsibility is when you're aware of what's going on, choosing inspired action to now work through that. And then self-leadership is the third one, which is about really aligning with your values and becoming aware of your actions. Am I taking inspired action, or am I just taking action because that's what the people around me are doing, or that's what conditioning is telling me to do? So it really is about looking at what is your whole value system based on. And again, that honesty word, being honest with yourself, where once upon a time that value served me, it actually doesn't serve me anymore, because I can see that, it was based around fear. I choose to now sit in more expansion. I choose to sit from a place of love. So my value is going to shift in this way. So it's really about all of these things, as you can see: self-awareness, self-responsibility, self-leadership. It's about self. It's an inward job. And that's the huge paradigm shift that has to happen in workplaces, rather than the external inward approach, which is, work on your skills. Skills are relevant for a certain level, but they don't actually, it's not an inside correction. It's not an inside working through. It's just the outside approach to maybe improving what you're doing, but it doesn't actually look at your inside state of being. And so this is what I think a lot of workplaces are failing to take into account, which is each person has their own lens. And if we can give them the tools that enable them to have a greater awareness of who they are on the inside, how they're going to show up is more authentically. They're going to be their true self. They're going to be kinder to themselves, which, as we know, if we are, we're more likely to be kinder and open to those around us. And so the ripple effect then just continues outward.
Yeah, thank you for sharing so many different things that we can do. And when we start the journey, when we just say, do you know what, I'm actually going to take responsibility for how I'm being, then the tools that are right for us will come, yes. I feel. And it's not that difficult to find them. I mean, on this podcast, I've asked many guests to record little meditations. And if you're wanting to taste a bit of this or just to practice it, you can just have a look at some of those meditations and see what resonates. And practicing something like that before the event, almost rehearsing being in peace, rehearsing forgiveness, in meditation is a great way to give yourself the opportunity to respond in the moment next time rather than react. And I want to shift it slightly now to working with others. Also, when we get into an organizational context, we talked a lot about radical responsibility of self and our own state of being. But what is our responsibility towards others in our organizations, whether we're just employees, whether we're leaders? How does this shift ripple outwards, and how could it really practically change a culture or a culture of some of the clients you work with?
Definitely. I see this time and time again, having worked with leaders and teams across various industries, cross hierarchy, cross function, and the reoccurring theme that I see is a lot of workplaces operate in survival mode. They operate in a fear-based paradigm. And the reason why that is because all of these things that we've identified, a lot of people are foregoing their authentic self. So there's behaviour of people-pleasing and lack of worthiness, and people, not being forefront with ideas and innovation because they're not celebrated. They don't, this whole thing of equity, diversity, inclusion, there's a lack of. Their values on a wall, but it's very different. I always find that the scenario shows that the lived experience is very different to what the top level organisational leaders and system thinks it is. There's a huge disparity, and that's because every person is wearing their mask and not really in their most authentic state. So you can only be, how can I put this? What is your highest expression of your most authentic self will always be the right choice for the person next to you. And the reason why that is because when you're coming from a place of abundance, from a place of co-creation, from a place of sharing ideas and not feeling threatened by the other person, and so you're in protecting your piece of the pie, those sorts of states of being are what is conducive to a workplace that's open, that's expansive, that's innovative, that celebrates ideas, because each person is unafraid to show up as their most authentic self. So our responsibility to one another is really to stand in our own authenticity of who we are, because when we do that, we come from a place of wanting to collaborate, wanting to share experiences, wanting to be open. We see our fellow peers as collaborators and not competition. And that is the huge mindset shift that happens when you elevate your state of being, because you don't see your peer as someone you should be threatened by. You see them as somebody that enhances what you're doing. And so together it aligns for the greater good rather than just for my own self. And it's a game changer. And I see this time and time again when we do connect from that authentic space, it just becomes more joyful in the workplace. People are more open. You find that you're more connected than disconnected because, again, irrespective of position, title, we are connected on a human level. And so it's all about making our workplaces more human. What are the strategies where we can connect more authentically? And, this is such a relevant perspective now, because with AI, everything's AI driven and automized. But at the end of the day, nothing can replace human-to-human connection and authenticity, which is why that is the driver for building these workplaces where, the connection thrives. Yeah.
Yeah, and what's coming to me as you're speaking is that, going back to a point you made earlier, is that people are attracted to energy. They're attracted to the way you show up. And if you start to show up differently in this context, more vibrant, happier, more loving, more open, kinder, less serious, having fun with it, what happens to results in the business? I really want to get into this, because the idea is that if I stopped behaving in a certain way, then I risk the financial security of the business, which is our God, which is what we live and die by. And so I'd be interested in the clients you've worked with, what's happened to results?
The results, Gallup actually does a lot of research in this area as well. And it shows that the results, when people come from their most authentic state and feel free to be their true self, and their goals are aligned to the organisational goals, to the team goals, everybody is working towards the same bigger goal, but within that, they can see how their goal relates. The results transcend. Profit, performance increases, impact, because people are motivated by something bigger than just their own profit or earning. People are motivated by impact, and impact is really what connects and binds us all. At the end of the day, we all have a human drive for meaning, that our life is meaningful, and meaningful in our relationships, but meaningful in the bottom line. And, the science around this is and what drives us as a human species is self-determination. And the leading theory in human motivation is self-determination theory by Deci and Ryan. And what they coined is that as human beings, we are motivated, and that motivation becomes sustainable when 3 core human needs are met. And one is autonomy, and we've spoken a lot about that we are the author of our own life. And so our values, who we are, is all aligned within that. And it's about personal buy-in, essentially. And so that's a game changer in workplaces, because leaders are forever trying to get the buy-in of their team. But when that buy-in comes authentically from within each person, it becomes sustainable. The second one is relatedness, and so feeling a sense of connection in our team, in our great wider organisation. And the third one is competence, so feeling that we are making a difference in our own life, but also in our environment. And that's where impact comes in, meaning comes in, that, our work endures and is making a ripple effect beyond our own experience. So when those 3 core human needs are met, autonomy, relatedness and competence, motivation becomes sustainable. And so this is what drives the momentum within the organisation and what drives the sustainable, profitable results and impact.
So if you're creating a culture where people can get these needs met,
yeah,
and you're also creating relationships with customers where they can get these needs met, then results go through the roof.
Absolutely.
Relationships go through the roof. This is an area I've worked in as well for the last decade, has been the psychological landscape of needs.
Yeah.
And I'd love to get your thoughts on how these needs evolve as we get transition from the psychological to the spiritual. Because on one level, what you just described is undeniably true. When I go to work and I feel competent and I achieve things, and when I have good relationships, whenever I have a level of autonomy, I can make decisions, I just thrive. And yet, sometimes I go into environments where those things are not possible. And what we've discussed a lot in this conversation has been that nothing outside you can truly define your inner way of being. And so how do those needs evolve when you start to say, well, actually, true autonomy means choosing my state of being, not being like the one who makes all the decisions. Or, relatedness. I can have all these friends and I could be in a group of people, but I could be desperately lonely inside because I'm not actually a friend to myself.
Yeah.
Or competence. If I put my competence into, I'm doing this workshop well, this went the way I expected to do, I did that skill, then that in itself is good, it's better, but it's also fragile.
Yeah.
And so because my self-worth is already then conditional.
Yes.
And so at what point do you see these needs being really useful for one's development? And then is there a point where they become almost cages or traps?
Definitely. And it's an important question, actually, because these words can be interpreted whichever way. And so when you're looking at autonomy, connection, competence, a lot of people look at those with the external lens. So autonomy, with the external lens, well, I'll give you, with your to-do list, or I'll give you autonomy in this sense. It's always an outside-in approach. Connection, well, we're going to have Friday night drinks and our team are going to bond, or we're going to do this team building exercise. And competence, well, I'll send you on this 2-day workshop and you can deepen your skills. Again, it's an external, outside-in approach. So it's fleeting. So really the definition of is not looking at these as an outside-in approach, because we're then looking at, well, what are you going to do for me that's going to fulfill these needs? It starts within. So when we're looking about autonomy, again, it's about the autonomy that starts with some of these words that we keep using and keep coming up: authenticity and truth and honesty with self. Because autonomy starts with knowing how you feel around certain things, what you're choosing for yourself. Am I choosing this because it's the path of least resistance, or I'm fearful of speaking up, or I don't think I'm worthy, so I'm going to choose this outcome? Autonomy starts with honesty with self. It's an inside job. So through the practices that we take clients on, a lot of the practices of autonomy is built within self-awareness. So it's becoming aware of our own patterns and the basis with which we make decisions. Is it from a place of fear? Is it from a place of expansion? Is it from a place of our past upbringing, which told us that, you've got to earn worthiness? So it's only we can become autonomous when we become aware of what these patterns are. So when I talk about all these things, it's within the inner landscape, within the inner practices of that. Even self-leadership, it's how can I, what is the inspired action that I can take in this moment that's aligned with who I am, but more importantly, who I choose to be. So always from a place of compassion. That's something to always remember front and center. And from a place of forgiveness, the word forgiveness is really important. A lot of people see forgiveness as something hard to do, but we can only, and forgiveness is an inward job. It's not about being overt about it. You don't actually even need to forgive outward other people in verbally. It's a choice you make within. And it's really just setting the prisoner free, which is yourself, because otherwise you're going to keep replaying that story 3 weeks, 3 years, 30 years down the track, and that holds you captive. So, and again, competence, it's about an inward experience, not about skills. Skills are something that happens by the by, but competence is about how to develop these practices ongoingly that deepen your practice of sitting in your authenticity, which is a quiet authenticity. It's not an outward one, because it's really important to make this this difference, because a lot of people see it as confidence is outward, and that person is really confident and their presence is very overbearing and they must really be authentic in who they are. No, that's just masking who they are under the surface, because if you truly feel in alignment with who you are, it's not. It can be an expression of confidence in words, but it's not always overt. You don't have to overt or dominate. It's not a domineering, that's the word, presence. Yeah.
Yeah, this is such a beautiful and nuanced space, actually, because I'm a trained psychotherapist, psychologist. I've worked in that space. I've worked with these ideas with people's needs in businesses. I've seen the incredible, powerful impact of going from a place of I'm in a toxic environment where I cannot get my needs met.
Yeah.
To I have learned coping skills. I've learned certain capabilities that has strengthened my ability to get my needs met.
Yeah.
And plug in the gaps. I was really nervous before around public speaking, but I needed it for my work. So now, and I mastered that, and now I can stand confidently in a room. And you're right to be like, yes, my competence has improved. And that is a beautiful step. We don't want to actually put that down at all. The additional freedom I think that you're offering is to say, notice whenever that competence and that becomes a bit of a cage, because there's another level to it. There's another level of saying, actually, my self-worth is unconditional, whether I stammer on this podcast or not. My self-worth is not conditional based on that.
Yes.
And actually, from that place, then your skill goes to another level altogether.
Absolutely.
And so I see it as like the psychological. It brings you to a certain place and it allows the platform for you to step into the spiritual.
Yes.
Which would be an example would be, wow, look at all these different areas of control I'm taking in my life. Yeah, I'm making more decisions in work. I'm making more decisions about what I eat. Beautiful. And then you go, wait, actually, I'm making more decisions in how I'm being.
Yeah.
And then at a certain point, you might go, am I really the one making these decisions at all? When I look around and I go, am I the one running the show? Is this autonomy that I feel so strongly, is it something that's real, or is there another level of that as well? And this is something that mystical traditions and spiritual traditions talk to a lot, that maybe there's a greater force doing all of this. And so I wanted to step into this area with you, because in many ways it seems wholly incompatible to the egocentric, self-driven view that our organizations work in.
Yeah.
Which is, let's put ourselves in the position of a CEO, right? And we've worked with many. That CEO has been so rewarded for all of the hard decisions that have been made, for all the sacrifices that have been made, for all of the promises that are made to the board, for all of this. And it's really, really been living and dying by those outcomes and saying, if I get this done, then I'm enough. If I don't, then I'm not, and I get fired. And so then to start that spiritual journey, the awakening to that perhaps I'm part of a greater force, and to say, well, you know, whether or not we make revenue this year or whether or not this thing, maybe it's not all up to me. How do you help someone like that to awaken a little bit more to the deeper reality without blowing up their lives or getting into a situation that's ultimately not productive or not working well for them?
I love this conversation around spirituality. Spirituality, is a continuum, if you like, and we're all there somewhere on this continuum. It's a very grounded, practical, daily application of how you live your life. That's how I like to see it. It's an embodiment of what you choose to be on a daily basis. And so at different aspects, that evolves. And trust and surrender are the two words that come to mind. Now, these words are very strong words, and something that I can relate to, because trust and surrender have been the biggest words in the journey of my experience and my life. And certainly the scope of that is very different now to early in my career and early in my journey of even starting, entrepreneurship and at various stages of my life. It's not something that you embody straight away, because again, if you don't trust your inner state of being, you're going to feel very hard to trust in the greater picture and that there is a higher power at play here. But it's all an evolution and a growth. Again, it comes back to self-love and feeling I am enough, and feeling that my worthiness is not dependent on this contract taking place or this pay rise. I'm already enough as I am. And it's only when we can let go of the lower frequencies, the the denser frequencies that hold us down, because that base our worthiness and all these things happening, that we're able to really step into more of that freedom of recognizing that we are part of a greater good. It's a muscle that happens and strengthens over time. The more you learn to trust. Now, when I look back on my life's journey and certain things that at the time I saw as maybe a failure, because in our world, we're very conditioned to avoid failure and to strive for success, and those two sit at opposites of each other. We're very conditioned to strive for balance. We got to balance this with this. The moment you talk about balance or you put one against the other, they're two opposing forces, and they create this push-pull action which causes the instability that happens within us. Because if you're striving for one and then and it's too much one way, and then you try to pull it back the other, and it causes this inner turmoil. And that's usually, so when you're feeling that inner turmoil, you're not connected with what else is going on around you. You're too focused on your inner world, which is very limited. So the first place is to come from this place of inner peace. So inner peace only happens when we start feeling truth that our worthiness is not dependent on anyone or any place or anything outside of us. And it happens with all these steps that we've spoken about before, self-awareness, taking that and being more self-responsible, and what can we do with that information. And as we clear out this kind of, the imagery I have is like this dense forest with all these weeds and things going everywhere. As we clear that out and feel a greater sense of space and freedom within ourselves, we're suddenly thinking more openly and expansively. And the next phase of that is we recognize that we are connected with one another. We recognize that we are connected with nature. You know, it's like this incremental steps that happen. And you start seeing these synchronicities that happen. So when what you felt like a failure in that situation that didn't take place, and suddenly it redirected you in a space where now that situation that happened is actually better for you. It's more expansive. You truly experience your authentic self in that state. And because of that, the ripple effect was XYZ. You start seeing these synchronicities that happen that, and you recognize, oh, thank God that happened. It actually wasn't a failure. It was a redirection that's brought me to this space. And because of that, I've experienced something different that I wouldn't have happened if I experienced this thing. So that mere experience gives you a greater sense of trust. You're suddenly trusting more because of that experience. So the next time something happens, you don't see it as a failure, you see it as a redirection. So that builds on itself. So trust is a strengthening that happens over time. Because of that, you feel a greater sense of freedom to step into the unknown and choose the path that's sometimes the path of less travelled. So it builds on itself. So the more you become trusting, the more you recognise, well, that actually wasn't my decision. It was my capacity to let go in that moment, let go of what the outcome should be, and that revealed the next phase. So surrender is also a very important aspect, and letting go of the outcome. Now, when you say that, it doesn't mean you don't do anything. It means, yes, take the inspired action, but beyond that, you can't control the outcome. So take the inspired action. Don't attach to what that should look like, because often, and what my experience has been, it far exceeds what my limited mind would perceive that outcome to be. So that experience then gives you a greater sense of trust and a greater sense of belief in something outside of yourself. And you start building more in that capacity and trusting more, And then you start having these conversations with higher power, because you believe in, the vision that your life is here to make an impact. And so you recognize that you're just a channel for that to express through yourself. So, my intention daily is, how can I help me today get out of my own way? What parts of myself are still caught up in a little bit of fear? How can I let go of that more so I can show up from my most authentic self, so I can hear my inner guidance, so I can trust my inner guidance? It's never about how can I get this goal to achieve this money, or it's always how can I get out of my own way? Because what I have learned is, when I do that, people, places, opportunities that are aligned with that frequency, with that state of being, just effortlessly roll in without me having to strive and struggle and hustle. And yes, it's a journey. And yes, I have done all that in the past, where have really attached to success in the traditional sense, and the struggle and the, to-do list, and the doing paradigm. And I have seen, when you come from a place of being, not only in my own experience, but in the teams that I've worked with, how when you shift that, the reward is different. It's more impactful, it's sustainable, it's more joyful, it's more expansive. There's a greater sense of connection, and the results are, because results that come from a place of fear are very different to results that come from a place of expansion and co-creation.
Yeah, it's almost like it's something too beautiful, and our ego is so scared, almost this quote comes to me, it's like, it's our light, not our darkness, that scares us.
Yeah.
And it's like, surely not. Yeah. Surely if I lived the life true to myself, would I be punished? We feel like we live in a universe that would punish you for being yourself. Whereas actually, ironically, we live in a universe that's the opposite. And that in every moment, it's actually trying to put you in the place of alignment, only you're resisting from fear. And the trust in that, as you said, just builds over time. And it's something that is applicable in our business life. It is applicable in organizations. And the rewards, not just in terms of your state of being and being in alignment, but also in terms of financial, relationship, lifestyle, location, all of those rewards, they're not going to go away.
No.
Because we imagine that it's our egoic drive to earn money and to secure ourselves that is keeping us safe.
Yeah.
And that, unfortunately, is an illusion.
It is.
And we see it only when it breaks down very strongly. So we can say, oh, I'm in this relationship and, we're grinding through it, and then suddenly, bang, it blows up. Or, I'm really pushing hard and we're hitting all our goals. Like, suddenly, cancer. right? And suddenly this illusion is shattered so radically. And I think that waking up before those things happen to you, before things have to really hit an edge, is one of the biggest opportunities that we all have. Because make no mistake, life will turn up the pain until you listen.
Absolutely.
And pain is the greatest teacher. And so, in many ways, I feel this in myself, is like I just have very low tolerance for pain now. And the pain of not being in alignment is so great that the universe will humble you very quickly. And so, I think that's a beautiful piece. I wanted to just feel a bit into and give people a sense of your own journey in this space, because these sorts of lessons don't happen without hardship and a lot of learning. And so take us into your experience of when things really started to shift for you and what that evolution has been like.
I'm going to take you back to when I was 7, actually. I dreamed of being an archaeologist. I wanted to travel the world and I wanted to make these discoveries that would truly change the world. And I'd often sit in the backyard, very humble beginnings. We had this dirt patch and I'd draw a big map of the world and where I was going to travel and all the discoveries.
This is not in Australia?
In Australia, yeah. I was born overseas in Macedonia in a tiny village in a barn and came out when I was 2. And I remember building up courage to tell my parents about this dream that I had, that I was going to travel the world. And to my shock and surprise, they looked at me with sheer horror. How dare I dream so big? And this would not make a lot of money, and how would I feed my family? And they had made a huge sacrifice to come to a new land. And well, in that moment, as a 7-year-old, as you can imagine, a huge unworthiness fell upon me for dreaming so big. And so I took it upon myself to please my parents and make them proud. And that decision to do so would really form the basis of my thinking and decision-making for the next 25 years odd, which was about fitting in, people-pleasing, playing small. So I took a career in a safe industry, the accounting industry, and a marriage which was both decisions to please my parents and fit into the paradigm and make them proud. And, worked in the top-tier accounting firms, and then from there recognised the pattern that I saw in workplaces, and I wanted to do it differently. So I started my own accounting business, and I, built up quite a successful accounting business. But I remember this one day which was so pivotal, and I remember I was going out to a meeting and I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. And on this occasion, I actually stopped and I paused and I looked behind the eyes of the person, and I didn't recognise myself. And, I had a thriving business, family, house, all the success that would typically society would define, big network of social network, etc. But I didn't recognise the person, and I had become all these things to all these people, but I had lost who I was in the pursuit of that. Thinking we have to choose one over the other, you can't be happy and this. So, I pursued that success. And so, of course, there were tears and all the rest of it. But there was also, amidst that pain, there was also huge joy. And the joy was, firstly, in the recognition of the situation and the awareness around that, and the honesty to myself. And the second thing that took place is this huge radical responsibility I had chosen that path. It wasn't anyone outside of me. I had chosen that path. And then the third thing that happened was this incredible empowerment, and it really happened at a cellular level. And I feel it was really higher power at play in that moment, the recognition that I have the power to choose a different path. And so, a path that aligns fully with who I am and who I want to be. It was not about the goal or the achievement, is who I wanted to be. And I had recognized that I wanted to be so much more. And I don't mean in accomplishments or status, but in the freedom of expression and in the freedom of my own values and work that was more meaningful and fulfilling. And so that was a very pivotal moment in my life. And from there, sometime later, some radical things happened in my life. I sold my accounting business. Sometime later, my marriage ended. And so that was really the unraveling where I hit ground. I actually literally fell to my knees because everything that I had known and the identity, more importantly, that I had built around myself went. So whilst in that moment there was a lot of joy about what I could create, the work didn't start till after that because it wasn't just overnight, now I'll do this. I had to work through everything we spoke about today, all of those belief systems that kept me small, all of the unkindness to self and the worthiness and build on that and let go of, peel back the onion to see the person beneath. So, it was a journey of the greatest, and I say this time and time, the greatest aspect of my journey has been one of trust and surrender. And through that, being able to pave the path, because I didn't overnight think, I'm going to create a space in this new space in workplaces. It wasn't, this is a great thing. Where's my water bottle? This is going to make a lot of money. I'm going to start this. No, it was a process of embodiment. That's why I wholeheartedly believe in this work, because it's not just theory, it's an embodiment. I've lived it, I've walked it, I've taught it, I've seen the effects of it and the impact of it. When we can come back to our most authentic, true self, how it creates a life, a work and life that's not only fulfilling but truly impactful. And the whole point is you don't have to sacrifice the material things for it. That's a false paradigm that we've been taught. If you want fulfillment, you have to sacrifice. You don't actually do that. But what happens is how you create becomes more joyful, becomes more expansive, becomes more aligned, where you feel like you're really expressing your authenticity into the world. And so one step has built on the other. At times it has felt like literally walking through the wilderness because I've not known the next step or what the next step would look like. But I've learned to embody, okay, what's one inspired action I can take, and trusting that. And then sure enough, the path revealed. And so then it would be the next step. And so that just came from alignment and recognizing when I was out of alignment how that felt within my body. And so I wouldn't walk that path, I'd choose that path. And so, it's been an extraordinary journey.
Yeah, extraordinary journey that's only beginning.
Yeah.
Also, and continues.
Yeah.
And, to summarize all of that, what I hear is if you don't have alignment, then what do you have? What do you have? You can have absolutely everything material, success-wise, you can all things. But if you don't have alignment, then what do you actually have? And, in the weaving of that story, you mentioned a higher power, you mentioned surrendering, you mentioned, walking a path that's almost like being paved in front of you. And I would love to hear you speak on how is your personal connection to that higher power come about and developed? And was there a time when you were completely dismissive of that idea? And what's your evolution been like there?
Yeah, it has been an evolution. It's a very, how I would describe it, it's a very intimate connection, I feel, with higher power, with God. It's not from a religious perspective, though I am Orthodox, Christian Orthodox, but it's more an intimate conversation per se of how I live my life, as opposed to what, the society tells you it should look like. It's been an evolution. No, I mean, there was an aspect or a time in my life that I felt incredibly disconnected, first and foremost from myself. And of course, when you're disconnected from yourself, you're not connected to anything bigger than yourself. And so I remember a very defining time in my life where I felt connection to higher power. And one was at the miscarriage of my baby boy. And I miscarried very late in the pregnancy, so I had to deliver a stillborn. And I remember at that time really sitting in the pain of despair. And this was another moment. I've had a few of them where I was brought to my knees. And I remember feeling in that moment, it was a very gloomy day. It was very dark and gloomy outside. I think there was rain coming. And I remember from my hospital room just really contemplating life and just really feeling this incredible despair. And suddenly the light in the room, it felt like it illuminated this incredible light. And I just felt this deeper connection to source, to greater power. And the words I heard in my mind was, your life is for a purpose. And, there is meaning for your life. And though you can't see it now, even this experience will bring greater purpose in your life. And yeah, that was, I think, a very pivotal moment in my life. And then certain things have happened where you meet people and, that introduces you to a book. A very prominent book that I read was Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. This is a book that I read some 25, 30 years ago now. And that was a very integral kind of step in my journey as well. And there have been a few others in that sense as well. Yeah, there've been some defining conversations where I've had with people and, you hear something that you think, wow, that's very relevant for my situation right now. So when we feel connected to something bigger than ourselves, you start recognizing that people, places and situations will happen that will speak to you in a way that's relevant for a situation in that moment or an opportunity or just a connection. You just start being more attuned to your own environment and what's going on around you. Yeah.
I love that story of developing a personal relationship with that higher power. And I see in what you've taught today and what you teach people in organizations is actually just to start listening to that inside yourself.
Yeah.
Because one of the major teachings of Jesus, if we're going to use the Christian context, was, I and my Father are one.
Yeah.
The kingdom of heaven is within me.
Yes.
And that kingdom of heaven it speaks to us through that wise, kind, compassionate inner voice.
Yes.
That is truly us, actually. And it's a deeper part of us. And I think implicit in what you've talked about and thought today is that when you start to connect to that and listen to that, you're listening to your true self, and that will guide you like a light in dark places and in bright places and anywhere where you will listen to it. And that's why the meditation, the getting quiet, the going inside, the being honest with yourself, that's why all of those things work, is because they're helping you just clear away all of the confusion and the noise.
Absolutely.
Away from that. And the purer you can make that connection and start to just become that, as Christ said, to walk in the light, to embody the light in your body, to walk around as the light, and allow that light to shine through you. That is the thing that then connects people to you, and the right people will find you. And if you have a business, then your business will start to thrive because it's coming from that place.
Absolutely.
And you've called that place today alignment, which I think is a beautiful place, a way to call it.
Definitely. And I think, that's, Jesus, it was servant leadership. That's exactly what it's about. But that can only happen when you are connected first and foremost with yourself. And so, I know we've gone far and wide in this discussion, but it's actually a very grounded, practical approach, and it starts with yourself. The creed is your life, how you live your life on a daily basis. And so if you can take a look at that and be honest with yourself, what does that look like for you? I think that's a great place to start. And, there's no magic pill. We've been conditioned to think there's a magic pill in relationships, in work, in success, in dieting, in everything else, but there's no magic pill. So I think the way to actually become more aligned with who you are, that's the magic formula. And I think it's exciting because how I say is imagine workplaces where each person shows up in their most authentic self, and that's celebrated and honoured beyond their role for who they are. What will our workplaces look like? And then the capacity of that to co-create and the ripple effect that goes out into workplaces, but beyond that, the wider organisation, families, communities, the world. And suddenly we are the change we want to see. And I think that's what drives me. That's what inspires me every day, the impact, and through that, who I get to be.
Yeah, it's a lovely picture to paint, because the fear is that if we were to allow that to happen, chaos would reign, but actually harmony would reign. And in any of the work I've done with people in organizations, it's always been the positive impact it's had on their lives. And when they've gone back and they've said, wow, I used that idea with my kid at home and I came back and our relationship is better, and I realized that I was trying to control them and fighting over control. And when I let that go, actually more love blossomed. And this is how we change the world, by being ourselves and by expressing that authentically with people. And then seeing how that guides other people's journey and what they learn from us. We don't have to push anything on anybody. And so, thank you for doing the work that you're doing and for being brave and courageous to step into this space and to own it and to talk about it. Because there are many places where this is still a little bit taboo, and that will change. And over the next coming decades, this will become the norm as we evolve, and our organizations will align with this awakening that we're experiencing. And so thank you for being a forerunner, a canary in the mine. And is there anything else you'd like to share with people before
I was just going to say that we are at the forefront of change. Change is happening. The future of work is now, and we know that what we've been doing hasn't served us. So we have to think differently, and we have to be open to sustainable. What is sustainable change? And, coming back to these 4 defining priorities, how can the well-being of each person, intergenerational well-being, well, that starts with self. When each person is expressing and living their most authentic self, how can we, connect more deeply in an AI world? So making our workplaces more human. And how can we have sustainable leadership? So leadership, the role of leadership is shifting from managing to igniting this motivation at the source within each person. That's really powerful, because often leaders are trying to manage. So by igniting the potential within each person, I mean, that is a huge shift. And the last one is this business becoming a force for good. That is the sustainable paradigm that's already starting to shift. And I'm just really excited to see where this will evolve and grow, and the change that we're making in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. It's all destined.
Yeah.
That's to take the pressure off. Actually,
take the pressure off
and stop imagining that you are the one bringing this big change to the world.
Absolutely.
It's actually already happening, and it's going to happen the way it's meant to happen. And if someone's listening to this conversation and they go, yes, this is my person, I need to connect, I need to work with this person, how can they reach you?
So they can reach me at Mirjana at onebeyondsuccess.com, or just go to the website onebeyondsuccess.com.
Beautiful. And I'll put those links in the description. And if you enjoyed this conversation, there are many more beautiful conversations and meditations like this on the Humankind channel, on YouTube, Spotify, and on Apple Podcasts. And please do subscribe or follow wherever you get your podcasts too. And until next time, thank you very much.